Привіт! Мене звати Ольга. Сьогодні я буду говорити з вами на дуже важну тему. You seem confused. Good, some of you aren't. Ukrainian. This was Ukrainian. I didn't insult you, no. I didn't give you a compliment, no. I did not ask for directions, and I did not tell you about my day. What I said was, hello, my name is Olga, and today we will be discussing a very important topic, and that indeed was Ukrainian. Of course, I could have just shown you this. This pretty much sums it up. No words needed in Ukrainian or English. I understood the power of words when I immigrated from Ukraine when I was a teenager 27 years ago. Let me tell you that that was a pretty scary journey. I still remember going to a restaurant with my family and not quite being sure what meal will show up. And then there was a time when we went to the bank, signed a bunch of forms. I still don't know what we signed. And then there was a parking ticket. And for the life of us, we couldn't figure out what we did wrong. And it took us a long time to figure out how to pay it. So yeah, that was an adventure, all right? It was a very scary, nerve-wracking adventure, and I sure hope to never repeat it again. Fast forward a few years later, my English improved. My mother comes to me with medical insurance forms. She asked me to read them. Good news, I understood every word. I still didn't understand the document. She asked me to summarize. I struggle. She asked me to tell her what choices she should make. I struggle even more. That was happening to me every time I was reading an important legal document. They may as well have been written in Elvish. And that's how I knew that I needed to learn yet another language. I needed to learn legalese. That's how I ended up going to law school, to learn legalese. Now, think about it. Laws are rules that apply equally to all of us. Whether you speak English or legalese, whether you went to law school or had any education whatsoever, or whether you have different abilities, laws will apply to you. So how come we're not communicating important legal concepts and legal documents in a way that will bring everyone on a journey with us? How come we're communicating in a way that pretty much excludes most, all of us, at least some of the times? And if we were to include everyone on a journey of fun with law, what would that language be? Well, that language would be a whole lot more visual. Think about it. When was the last time you sent a text? Did you include emojis? Why? Well, they do convey a lot of substantive information, right? But they also express how you feel. So I'm going to invite all of you to play a game. I'm going to invite all of you to rob a bank with me. Okay, this is not where you thought we were going, but bear with me. This is just a game. It's a simulation. So now I'm going to ask you to take an imaginary device and think through how you're going to convince me out of doing this without using words, only using emojis. Think about it. Think what you would write to me. And if I give you enough time, you would come up with something like this. Remarkably clear, isn't it? There's a sequence of events and a pretty compelling consequence. You shouldn't rob banks. Not a good idea, right? I invite you to do this at home. Again, not robbing the bank part, but the part where you ask your loved ones, your family, your friends, your parents, your children, your neighbors, to convince you into doing something or against doing something without using words. You will feel the power of visuals. In the last 3 years, we have been in a global pandemic, and this image of emoji, face mask, or a human face with a mask has become universal. This is the image that has kept us safe. This image has communicated in many languages, in many countries, the fact that we need to, yes, wear a mask. And yes, that we need to stay 6 feet apart or 1.5 meters apart, depending where you are in the world, and that you need to wash your hands, and many, many other things. You see, bacteria, viruses, disease, they're not limited by legalese. Why should our communications about important concepts be limited by legalese? All right, let's talk about important things in life. Let's talk about shopping. I love to travel, and when I travel, I look for 3 things. I look for food because I relate to people through food. I look for bathroom because that's a necessity. And yes, I look for shopping. So my favorite airport in the world is Doha, Qatar. How many people have been to Doha? It's an amazing place. That airport does have signs in Arabic, which I do not speak, unfortunately. And it has some signs in English, which I now thankfully do. But that's not the reason why I love the airport. The airport is a visually immersive experience. It's a modern design. It's well laid out. It has visual signs that direct me to my definition of fun, which is shopping. So when I travel, I, 1, make sure that I go through Doha, and 2, I make sure I stay there as long as possible. Why? Because this foreign adventure is exciting and fun. It turns out that we understand and learn 80 to 85% using images, pictures. They're very impactful to us. We are visual beings. So why not use those principles in law? Why not use pictures to communicate important concepts? Instead, today, our legal documents and legal communications are essentially reading comprehension tests where legalese is not your first language. Let me repeat it because this is important. Legalese is no one's first language. So why we all, at one point or another, suffer with our documents? Why our adventures in law are kind of like my adventures from Ukraine to United States, scary, and something I don't want to repeat. How come they're not more like my adventures in Doha, where I look forward to that adventure? And what do we need to do? We need to include many more pictures and visuals to really make a point. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about works of art here. What I'm talking about here is functional visuals, functional pictures. Let me show you some examples and discuss what that means. So one of the well-known functional image is a periodic table. It's a very familiar visual for many of you. This is a 1-page table that summarizes many, many words. It organizes chemical elements, their properties, and how they relate to one another. And in the process, it increases our understanding when we look at it. But much, much more than this. When the periodic table was invented, some of the elements were not known. They were not discovered yet. This table, yes, organize complex information, and yes, increase our understanding, and yes, allowed us to make inferences, predictions, to see the information more fully, to appreciate it. That's what a good visual would do. Creative contracts in South Africa basically did the same thing with employment agreement. They took a pretty complex employment agreement, they made a comics out of it, and they presented it to migrant farmers who do not speak the language. In the process, they definitely helped their journey. The migrant farmers understood what's expected. They were onboarded in 40 minutes as opposed to 4 hours, and they knew how much they would be paid at the end. And of course, the employer got a much clearer path to profitability. It's a win-win. Now, likewise, a company like Shrub that provides digital cash has taken its terms and conditions, used a lot of white space, strategically placed icons so that you, as a consumer, when you have questions, you can refer to this document and be guided to your answers. So now the adventures in digital cash are not scary. They're predictable and possibly fun because you know where to get the answers. We use functional visuals all the time. When we drive, for example, you see red, you know what that means. Red means stop, and green means go. What if you see a deer on a sign? What does that mean? Well, that means you have to be watchful for the safety of the two of you because deer may jump out at any time, and you may have to suddenly stop and hopefully be safe. What if you see a plane? What does that mean? Well, that means an airport is nearby, and in my case, that means an adventure. The question is that a scary kind of adventure I had immigrating from Ukraine to the United States? Or is it more like fun adventure when I go to Doha? Which one will it be? For the law to be a fun, exciting adventure that is predictable and inclusive of everyone on the journey, we must educate, we must engage, and we absolutely must empower. And to do that, we need to use fewer words, simpler words, and definitely more visual elements, definitely more pictures. Yes, more white space so your visuals can stand out, more tables, more timelines, more pictures of things we can relate to, metaphors that will propel us forward. That's what it means for us to explain, engage, and empower. I imagine that one day we can all go to the bank and understand every form you sign. I imagine that one day when we choose our insurance coverage, we will know exactly what we're signing up for. And yes, when we receive that parking ticket, we will have enough information to know whether we should challenge it and where to pay, independent of how well you speak English or legalese, whether you went to school or what abilities you have. That is how we'll have less frustration, less anxiety, more fun with law. That is how we'll bring justice for all, and ultimately, we'll have an adventure in universal peace. Дякую. Thank you so much.